In the early morning hours of November 18th, 2009, something unthinkable tears through a quiet home in Ohio, and before anyone can make sense of it, a frantic 911 call cuts through the darkness, a woman's voice shaking, desperate, begging for help, saying her husband has been shot. And as the operator tries to steady her, asking what's going on, what she needs, the panic only grows. Because this is Julene Simcoe, and she's waking up to a nightmare inside her own home, claiming someone shot her husband while she slept just feet away, saying the sound that jolted her awake had to be a gunshot. And in that moment, it feels like she's the lucky one, the one who survived. Because somewhere in that house, someone had come in, done this, and disappeared without a trace. And for years, whoever pulled that trigger stays out there, unknown, while Jeremy Simcoe's family is left searching, holding on to hope that one day they'll get answers, that someone will be held accountable. Until everything suddenly shifts, when investigators uncover something that makes them stop and question every assumption they've made, forcing them to ask Julene directly if there's anything she hasn't told them, anything at all. And she stands firm, denying everything, insisting she didn't shoot Jeremy, didn't kill her husband, leaving one haunting question hanging in the air. If not her, then who? And as the story begins to unravel, it leads to something deeper, something hidden beneath layers of secrecy, a mix of overlooked details, a complex security system, and years of deception that no one saw coming. Because just after 6 a.m. that morning, Julene had called for help, saying Jeremy wasn't breathing, following instructions to try CPR. Her voice strained as she answered questions about where he was, what condition he was in, until first responders arrived and confirmed the worst. Jeremy, just 36 years old, was already gone, shot in the back of the head at point-blank range in a way that immediately raised serious concerns. And as investigators began examining the scene, they found small details that only added to the confusion, like a trace amount of Benadryl in his system, not enough to explain anything, just enough to be noted. And inside the house, a .357 Magnum lay on the kitchen floor, a chair knocked over nearby, a purse sitting untouched, still full of cash, suggesting robbery wasn't the motive. While outside, the couple's 5 dogs had been tied up, and close by, a pair of black gloves and unfamiliar footprints hinted that someone had been there, someone careful, someone who knew what they were doing. Yet at the same time, the scene didn't fully support that idea, because the home's security system was working. There were no signs of forced entry, and not a single trace of foreign DNA anywhere inside, creating a contradiction that investigators knew all too well, the kind of case that keeps you up at night because nothing lines up the way it should. And as tips came in, each one seemed promising at first before falling apart. From reports of a suspicious man seen walking around days earlier talking on a phone before getting picked up by a car, to a neighbor who had once threatened someone with a gun and had access to the house, to theories about a drug deal gone wrong, and even a contractor who had argued with Jeremy and threatened him outright, saying if he had a gun, he would have shot him right then and there, a statement that suddenly felt chilling after the fact. Yet when police tracked him down, it led nowhere, his alibi solid, another dead end in a growing list of possibilities that never quite connect. And slowly, the case begins to lose momentum, slipping into that dangerous place where time passes and answers don't come. Until more than 7 months later, Jeremy's family gathers to remember him, trying to move forward while still living with the uncertainty of who took his life. Tensions within the family already strained, made worse by grief and unresolved conflict, including an email his sister had sent just days before his death, trying to make peace, a message he never got the chance to answer. And even in mourning, the divisions remain, with separate services held, relationships fractured, and questions left hanging, while Julene stays somewhat apart, saying she wants to honor her husband, but making choices that raise quiet concerns, including putting their home up for sale for $199,000, a move that seems less about money and more about leaving something behind, something she doesn't want to face. And when Jeremy's sister later shows up hoping to buy the house to keep his memory alive, the encounter quickly turns tense, with Julene asking them to leave, making it clear that whatever connection once existed is now gone. Emotions running high on both sides, words left unsaid but deeply felt. And as the investigation continues to stall, those closest to Jeremy are left waiting, holding on to the promise that someday the truth will come out, even as the years stretch on without answers, until November 2013 arrives. And after all that time, the case that once seemed frozen finally begins to move again, hinting that what really happened that morning may have been hiding in plain sight all along. More than 4 years after that terrifying morning, just when it seemed like the case might stay buried forever, investigators quietly circle back, reaching out to Julene once again, asking her to come in and go over the details one more time. Because behind the scenes, they haven't stopped working. And now they believe they've uncovered something that could change everything. Something that doesn't quite fit with the story they've been told. And when Julene agrees to meet, arriving at the station with her attorney by her side, the tension in the room is immediate. Because before anything even begins, her attorney brings up a newspaper article from October 4th, 2012, quoting the Vermilion police chief saying they believed they had already identified Jeremy's killer. And that alone raises serious questions. If police already know who did this, then why bring Julene back in, unless they think she's the one? And for a moment, everything hangs in the air, until investigators calmly explain that the case is still active, that if they truly knew who committed the murder, that person would already be arrested, making it clear that Julene is not in custody, not at this moment, but the tone suggests they're not here to waste time either. And as the interview begins, they try to keep things respectful, asking how she prefers to be addressed, setting a controlled, almost careful pace before guiding her back to that morning, November 18th, 2009, asking her to walk them through the previous 24 hours step by step, from the day before all the way to the moment she called 911. Because what they're really doing is establishing a baseline, comparing what she says now to what she said then, knowing that even the smallest inconsistency could matter. And Julene begins recounting her routine, describing a normal day spent working around their property, doing yard work, raking leaves, the kind of quiet, rural life she and Jeremy had built together through their tree service business, living out what many would see as a peaceful countryside dream near Lake Erie. And that evening, she says, they were canning pumpkins, watching television, talking about the future, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that would hint at what was coming. And when it was time for bed, they followed their usual routine, Jeremy taking the dogs outside and tying them up before they both went to sleep. But sometime during the night, the dogs started barking, waking Jeremy, who yelled out the window before settling back down. And then later, she says she moved upstairs to the 3rd floor to sleep, a small detail that now takes on new weight because it separates her from Jeremy in those final hours. And then she says she woke up suddenly to a sound she now believes was a gunshot, a moment that shattered everything, sending her rushing back downstairs, thinking at first that Jeremy had fired a gun himself. But when she entered the bedroom, she found Jeremy in bed, already wounded. And at the same time, she claimed she heard noises in the hallway, something that made her believe there could still be someone inside the house. And in that instant, she grabbed the 9mm handgun from her nightstand and fired 2 shots down the hallway, warning shots, trying to scare off whoever might be there, before returning to Jeremy's side and calling 911, staying on the line until officers arrived. And as she continues, her memory becomes less clear, describing fragments of what happened next, officers entering the room, moments blurring together, and then being taken to the hospital because she couldn't calm down, where she recalls feeling confused, isolated, not remembering seeing doctors or nurses, only being questioned, wanting to call her mother but being told she couldn't leave or make that call yet. A chaotic sequence that, on the surface, seems understandable given the trauma of what she had just experienced, especially considering the years that have passed. But as investigators listen closely, they're not just hearing her story, they're measuring it, weighing every word against what they already know. Because in a case like this, it's always the smallest details, the ones that seem harmless, that end up meaning everything. As the questioning shifts into something more focused, more deliberate, the investigators lean in, making it clear they're no longer just listening. They're testing her memory, trying to tighten every loose thread, asking Julene to go back to that night and walk through it again, step by step, hoping that by working together, they can sharpen her recall. Because this matters. Every second of it matters. And when they asked what time she went to bed, her answer comes uncertain, somewhere around 11 or midnight, not exact, not firm, and they press gently, circling back to the evening itself, to the pumpkins she says they were canning, asking what Jeremy was doing, confirming they were together, alone in the house, no visitors, no interruptions, nothing out of place. And yet, when they ask when that activity ended, she can't say, her memory fading in the details that now seem so critical. And still, she insists nothing felt off, nothing suspicious, just another ordinary night, until the questions turn to something more specific, something that seems small but isn't. Who locked up the house? Who secured the property before bed? And again, there's uncertainty. No clear answer, just that it could have been either of them, whoever was last. A shared responsibility that now leaves a gap investigators can't ignore. Because if someone entered that house, someone had to leave a door unlocked. And then they moved to the dogs, those 5 dogs outside, asking what it meant when she said Jeremy hooked them up. And she explains the chains, the dog houses, how they could move around. But even here, the details blur. She can't say how long the chains were. 8 feet, maybe more, maybe less. And while it might seem trivial, investigators know it isn't, because those dogs were known to react, to bark at anything unusual, any movement, any stranger approaching the property, something even a neighbor confirms, describing how they would come running, barking at the slightest disturbance. Yet on that night, nothing. No reports of barking, no sign they reacted at all. And when Julene is asked directly if she heard them during the night, she says no, nothing out of the ordinary. A detail that quietly contradicts the idea of an intruder moving through the property unnoticed. And then the focus shifts again, this time to what Jeremy had taken before bed, and she recalls that he had taken sleeping pills, something he did regularly, a routine that explains the Benadryl found in his system, another piece that fits neatly into place. And still, the investigators keep going, asking about arguments, tension, any conflict between them. And she denies it. No fights, no disputes, nothing unusual. Though when pressed about stress, she admits there was some, not between them exactly, but surrounding their efforts to buy property nearby, land they were already using for their business, land they wanted to officially own, a goal complicated by financial strain and issues with their credit, creating pressure that lingered in the background of their lives. Not explosive, not obvious, but present. And as these details unfold one by one, the picture they're building isn't dramatic, it's subtle, made up of small inconsistencies, missing specifics, and quiet contradictions, the kind that don't stand out on their own, but begin to matter when placed side by side. Because in cases like this, it's not always the big moments that reveal the truth, it's the little ones, the ones that don't quite line up, the ones that make investigators pause, look closer, and start to wonder if what happened that night was really as simple as it first seemed. As the questioning presses forward, the focus shifts to the days leading up to Jeremy's death, and what seems like ordinary background suddenly takes on a sharper edge. Because just days before he was killed, the couple had been denied a bank loan they desperately wanted, adding quiet pressure to a life that Julene still insists was happy, describing Jeremy as the love of her life, a man she had been married to for 10 years after a short courtship, someone she had known through friends long before that. And when asked about arguments, she downplays them, saying they were like any other couple, nothing unusual, nothing frequent. Though when pressed further, she admits there was one incident early in their marriage when things turned physical, a slap across the face that she returned in kind, a moment she claims never repeated, painting a picture of a relationship that, despite outside perceptions of Jeremy's temper, remained stable inside their home, even as others describe him as a hothead, someone quick to anger, someone who could clash with people easily. Yet somehow, according to Julene, none of that spilled into their marriage in any lasting way. And then the timeline moves back into that final night, where small details begin to matter more than ever. As she recalls the dogs barking at some point, waking them both, Jeremy restless enough to take another sleeping pill before eventually drifting off again, snoring as he usually did, while she, unable to rest, took half a pill herself and moved upstairs to the third floor, choosing distance over discomfort, a decision that now places her away from him in those critical moments. And when asked what she remembers next, her answers begin to slip. Less certain, less defined, describing only a noise that woke her. Something loud, but impossible to clearly explain. Something she doesn't immediately identify as a gunshot. And that hesitation lingers as investigators press her to clarify, to describe the sound, to give it shape. But she can't, only repeating that it was enough to wake her, enough to pull her from sleep. And when she went downstairs, she says she assumed Jeremy was awake, possibly shooting out the window, something they had done before to deal with animals on the property. Coyotes, raccoons, whatever wandered too close. A routine that made the sound seem less alarming in the moment, less urgent. And so she walked back into the bedroom, not rushing, not expecting what she would find. And when asked to recall exactly how she entered, whether she paused or went straight in, she doesn't remember. Another missing detail. Another BAP. And as she describes approaching the bed, she says Jeremy appeared to be lying there, almost as if he were sleeping, positioned somewhere near the middle, slightly towards her side, and she went to wake him, reaching out in a way she can't fully describe, unable to recall where she touched him or what she said, if she said anything at all. And then comes the moment that changes everything, when she feels something wet in the bed, something she can't immediately identify but knows is wrong, something that triggers the realization that this isn't sleep, this isn't normal, that something is terribly off. And as investigators press her to be specific, to explain exactly what she experienced in that instant, she says he didn't respond, that he was unresponsive, and then almost immediately after noticing the wetness, she heard a noise, a detail that lands heavily because it suggests movement, presence, something else in that house at the exact moment she discovered her husband. And it's in these small, uncertain fragments, the unclear sounds, the missing specifics, and quiet contradictions, the kind that don't stand out on their own but begin to matter when placed side by side. Because in cases like this, it's not always the big moments that reveal the truth, it's the little ones, the ones that don't quite line up, the ones that make investigators pause, look closer, and start to wonder if what happened that night was really as simple as it first seemed. As the questioning presses forward, the focus shifts to the days leading up to Jeremy's death, and what seems like ordinary background suddenly takes on a sharper edge. Because just days before he was killed, the couple had been denied a bank loan they desperately wanted, adding quiet pressure to a life that Julene still insists was happy, describing Jeremy as the love of her life, a man she had been married to for 10 years after a short courtship, someone she had known through friends long before that. And when asked about arguments, she downplays them, saying they were like any other couple, nothing unusual, nothing frequent. Though, when pressed further, she admits there was one incident early in their marriage when things turned physical, a slap across the face that she returned in kind, a moment she claims never repeated, painting a picture of a relationship that, despite outside perceptions of Jeremy's temper, remained stable inside their home, even as others described her as a hothead, someone quick to anger, someone who could clash with people easily. Yet somehow, according to Julene, none of that spilled into their marriage in any lasting way. And then the timeline moves back into that final night, where small details begin to matter more than ever, as she recalls the dogs barking at some point, waking them both, Jeremy restless enough to take another sleeping pill before eventually drifting off again, snoring as he usually did, while she, unable to rest, took half a pill herself and moved upstairs to the third floor, choosing distance over discomfort, a decision that now places her away from him in those critical moments.
And when asked what she remembers next, her answers begin to slip, less certain, less defined, describing only a noise that woke her, something loud but impossible to clearly explain, something she doesn't immediately identify as a gunshot, and that hesitation lingers as investigators press her to clarify, to describe the sound, to give it shape. But she can't, only repeating that it was enough to wake her, enough to pull her from sleep. And when she went downstairs, she says she assumed Jeremy was awake, possibly shooting out the window, something they had done before to deal with animals on the property, coyotes, raccoons, whatever wandered too close. A routine that made the sound seem less alarming in the moment, less urgent. And so she walked back into the bedroom, not rushing, not expecting what she would find. And when asked to recall exactly how she entered, whether she paused or went straight in, she doesn't remember. Another missing detail, another gap. And as she describes approaching the bed, she says Jeremy appeared to be lying there, almost as if he were sleeping, positioned somewhere near the middle, slightly towards her side, and she went to wake him, reaching out in a way she can't fully describe, unable to recall where she touched him or what she said, if she said anything at all. And then comes the moment that changes everything, when she feels something wet in the bed, something she can't immediately.
As Julene continues, her account moves into those critical seconds after she sensed something was wrong, describing how she heard another noise out in the hallway, something she still can't clearly define, only that it was there, something moving or falling, something outside the bedroom that shouldn't have been. And in that moment, fear seems to take over as she reaches into her dresser, grabs the gun, unsure even now exactly where it had been kept, and fires toward the doorway without seeing a target, without knowing who or what might be there, acting purely on instinct, because as she explains, there shouldn't have been anyone else in that house, just her and Jeremy, no expected visitors, no reason for another presence, and yet she reacts as if there is, shooting first and only later trying to understand what's happening. And then she says she runs to the bedroom door, shuts it, locks it, sealing herself inside before returning to Jeremy, where she begins trying to help him, rolling him over, noticing the blood more clearly now, placing a towel against his head in a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding, searching for a phone when she can't find her own, eventually using his to call 911. And as she recounts the call, the details grow even less certain, describing how she followed the operator's instructions, pulling Jeremy from the bed to the floor, though she can't recall exactly how she managed it, whether she held the phone or set it down, only that she was trying to do what she was told, trying to save him, even as it became increasingly clear that he wasn't responding, that something was terribly wrong. And when asked if there was a moment she believed he was already gone, she can't say. Her thoughts at that time blurred by panic and shock. And when police arrived, she remembers hearing them outside the locked door, calling to come in, forcing her to get up and unlock it, a small but crucial detail that now lingers because investigators can't ignore the question it raises. If she believed her husband was dying, why take the time to lock the door in the first place, unless it had already been locked, unless there was never anyone else inside at all? And it's this kind of detail that begins to shift the tone of the interview, subtle but significant, as they move away briefly from that night to ask about her familiarity with firearms, establishing that she had experience, that she had been around guns for years, had hunted with Jeremy, knew how they worked, even if she didn't regularly clean them herself. And that matters because the weapon believed to have been used, a .357 Magnum found in the kitchen, had been wiped clean. No DNA, no trace of blowback despite being fired at point-blank range, something that strongly suggests it had been deliberately cleaned afterward, not left as it was, not abandoned in panic, but handled with care. And as all of this begins to stack up, the unclear noises, the missing details, the locked door, the cleaned weapon, the investigators finally address what's been building beneath the surface, telling her plainly that there are inconsistencies, that they don't feel they have the full story, that if they did, this case might already be resolved.
And then comes the question that hangs heavier than any before it, the one that shifts everything into focus. When they ask her directly if there is anything at all that she hasn't told them. As the interview pushes past the 1 hour mark, the tone shifts again, tighter now, more deliberate, because investigators can feel it. They're getting closer, and this is the moment where small cracks either close or widen into something far more revealing. And when Julene is asked again about the gun, about the exact way she held it when she fired into the hallway, her uncertainty returns, saying she doesn't remember whether she used one hand or two, though she admits she probably used both, a subtle guess rather than a clear memory. And that lack of certainty doesn't go unnoticed, because now they begin walking her carefully through her own sequence of events, step by step, placing her back in that bedroom, reminding her that before she ever picked up the gun, she had already touched Jeremy, already felt something wet in the bed, blood. And then, after firing, she returned to him again, gun still in hand, moving through what she herself described as a scene filled with blood. And that's when they ask the question that lands harder than the rest. Whether she wiped the gun off at any point, because the reality they're presenting is simple and difficult to ignore. There was no blood on that weapon. None at all, despite everything she claims happened in that room. And her answer is the same pattern they've been hearing all along. She doesn't remember. She can't say. And yet, that absence of blood extends beyond just one firearm, because even her own 9mm, the one she says she used to fire toward the hallway, shows no trace of blood either, despite her insistence that she had already come into contact with it. And that contradiction begins to settle into something heavier, something harder to explain away. Because in a dark room with no clear visibility, how did she even know Jeremy was bleeding unless she had already interacted with him more directly than she's describing? Or unless something else happened before the sequence she's giving. And the investigators don't say it outright, but the implication lingers, pressing quietly against every answer she gives. And then they pivot, bringing up another detail she herself had mentioned earlier, that when Jeremy took the dogs out at night, he usually locked the doors when he came back in, that it was part of his routine, something consistent, something predictable. And she agrees, confirming that yes, that's what he typically did, which leads them to the next piece of the puzzle, one that doesn't fit nearly as neatly, because forensic testing found no fingerprints, no DNA from Jeremy on the kitchen door, the very door he would have had to use, the very door he would have had to touch. And when confronted with that, Julian offers no explanation, simply deferring again, saying they're the experts, that she doesn't know how that could be, leaving the gap wide open where an answer should be. And with each moment like this, each I don't know, each missing detail, her position grows weaker, not stronger, because the story isn't becoming clearer, it's becoming more uncertain, more fragmented. And then they bring up the .357 Magnum, the weapon believed to have been used to kill Jeremy, asking where it was normally kept. And again, there's hesitation, uncertainty. She thinks it may have been in the china cabinet, but isn't sure if that was its usual place. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And when they reveal that DNA testing on that cabinet only showed her DNA and none of Jeremy's, the inconsistency deepens, because if that gun belonged to both of them, if it was regularly accessed, why would his DNA be absent? And again, there's no explanation, only another quiet deflection, another unanswered question left hanging. And now the investigators widen the lens, stepping back to look at the broader picture of their lives, describing them as security-conscious couple, people who had taken steps to protect their home, installing an alarm system, even if it wasn't actively monitored, using chimes on doors, setting up a driveway alarm, all measures designed to alert them to any movement, any intrusion, any unexpected presence. And she agrees with that characterization, though she pushes back slightly on the idea that the area was safe, insisting there had been break-ins before, that their property and neighbors had experienced theft, that this wasn't some quiet, untouched community. But even so, the statistics tell a different story. A place where violent crime is rare, where the odds of a random attack are incredibly low, and that contrast becomes another silent pressure point in the room. Because while she frames this as a possible burglary gone wrong, the evidence doesn't fully support it, and investigators know it, because when you combine everything, the no lack of forced entry, the absence of foreign DNA, the silence of the dogs, the locked door, the cleaned weapon, the missing fingerprints, you're left with a scenario that becomes harder and harder to reconcile with the idea of an unknown intruder. And so they lay it out again, calmly but firmly, reminding her of the reality of that night. A house with just the two of them inside, a property surrounded by dogs that would react to any disturbance, a couple who took precautions to monitor their home, yet somehow, according to the story, someone entered unnoticed, committed a precise, fatal act, and disappeared without leaving a trace. And it's in that growing tension, that growing gap between what's being said and what the evidence suggests, that the interview reaches a critical point, where every unanswered question starts to feel less like confusion and more like something being withheld, because at this stage, it's no longer just about what happened that night. It's about whether the truth has been there all along, just waiting to be fully revealed.
As the interview pushes past the 1 hour mark, the tone shifts again, tighter now, more deliberate, because investigators can feel it. They're getting closer, and this is the moment where small cracks either close or widen into something far more revealing. And when Julene is asked again about the gun, about the exact way she held it when she fired into the hallway, her uncertainty returns, saying she doesn't remember whether she used one hand or two, though she admits she probably used both, a subtle guess rather than a clear memory. And that lack of certainty doesn't go unnoticed, because now they begin walking her carefully through her own sequence of events, step by step placing her back in that bedroom, reminding her that before she ever picked up the gun, she had already touched Jeremy, already felt something wet in the bed. Blood.
Julene Simcoe sits across from investigators, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife, and they start peeling back layers that she's long relied on to keep her story tidy, starting with the alarms on the property, the driveway chimes, the house sensors, devices she says weren't even active that night, though they'd been installed after previous break-ins at the barn where Jeremy and Julene stored their tree service equipment, chainsaws, and tools. A neighbor mentions that the culprit might have just been a disgruntled employee, not some dangerous intruder. And yet all these measures, all this supposed security, didn't prevent the fatal events of November 18th, 2009, when Jeremy was shot. Because investigators now note, with pointed scrutiny, that the back door of the house was found open while the screen door was closed, that no forced entry signs existed, no fingerprints of Jeremy were on the kitchen door, and no DNA was there either, even though that was the door both he and Julene used daily. And in her effort to explain this anomaly, Julene says she remembers something about the 911 operator asking if the police could enter the house, and that she consented. But the details are fuzzy, the timing unclear, and her recollections keep sliding around the edges of plausibility. While the .357 Magnum that killed Jeremy lies on the kitchen floor, 6 rounds loaded, 1 spent, 5 alive, the weapon cleaned, no traces of blood, yet she claims to have touched him, to have discovered the blood, raising a chilling possibility that she herself could have handled the murder weapon, or even worse, that she had caused the wound, all while the dogs that should have barked at anyone entering were silent. No neighbors reported disturbances, and only 2 people were in the house, 1 dead, 1 not. An alignment that in any homicide case naturally points suspicion inward, toward the survivor, toward Julene. And investigators push her on the logic of it, asking her to see the picture they're painting, and she hesitantly nods, acknowledging the reasoning without defending herself. And as if that weren't enough, they layer in history, reminding her of her early years with Jeremy, how she met him while dating another man, allegedly encouraging that boyfriend to confront Jeremy, an act that a mutual friend recalls as manipulative, suggesting that Julene was already capable of bending situations to her will.
And then comes corroboration from other associates, including Jeremy's cousin, who recounts a heated argument where Jeremy reportedly hated Julene, describing an altercation where he either struck her or forced her against a wall, grabbed her by the throat, a moment of domestic violence that reveals cracks in their seemingly calm exterior, while simultaneously exposing Jeremy himself as a volatile, aggressive figure with his own violent past, including an axe attack on an assailant and a childhood incident where he shot a stray dog while camping on a farm, pointing to patterns of aggression that make the couple's relationship a tinderbox of tension and unresolved anger. And now, as the investigators lay out all these interconnected details, the unlocked back door, the cleaned weapon, the open question of whether an intruder existed at all, Julian's inconsistent statements, her own potential access to the scene, they're not just recounting evidence, they're constructing a narrative that starts to make the previous story unravel, piece by piece, exposing the chilling possibility that the night Jeremy died, the supposed intruder might never have existed. That the truth could lie not in some random burglary gone wrong, but within the very walls of the home she shared with him. And every glance, every hesitation, every "I don't know" from Julene now carries the weight of suspicion, hanging in the room like smoke. Because in the end, when a house is secure, alarms exist, the dogs are silent, no neighbors heard a thing, no forced entry occurred, and only 2 people were present, logic demands you follow the simplest explanation. And the investigators want her to confront that possibility, to tell the full story she's been avoiding for years. And as they push on, the tension ratchets higher, because every small inconsistency, every memory gap, every deflection in her answers isn't just a missed detail, it's a potential clue, a door swinging open to a truth that, if revealed, changes everything about the case of Jeremy Simcoe's death. As the investigation digs deeper, the picture of Jeremy and Julene's life together grows darker, more complicated, layered with stories that don't quite fit the image of a peaceful rural marriage, because people who knew Jeremy begin to describe a man with a volatile edge, someone capable of crossing lines most wouldn't dare approach, including his ex-fiancée, who recalls him as obsessive, saying he would track her movements, know her license plate, monitor her life in ways that felt more like stalking than concern. And that fear escalated into something far more disturbing when she says he attacked her boyfriend's dog, cutting its throat, an act so violent it forced her to call the police, painting Jeremy not just as difficult, but as someone capable of extreme behavior. And yet, the story doesn't stop there, because after Jeremy's death, Julene briefly begins seeing another man named Sheldon. And even in that short relationship, another unsettling detail emerges. When Sheldon admits he once slapped her during an argument, something he immediately regretted, something he apologized for, only to be met with a response that left him shaken when Julene calmly told him she had been hit harder than that before, brushing it off as if it barely registered. A statement that lingers because it suggests a history of violence she had endured or accepted. And suddenly what investigators are looking at isn't just a single incident, but a pattern, a relationship that may have been built on tension, control, and buried trauma, a combination that begins to feel like a perfect storm. And just when it seems like they've uncovered enough, the case takes an even more disturbing turn as investigators bring up something deeply personal, something Julene can't easily deflect. The years of sexual abuse she suffered at the hands of her father as a child, a trauma that shaped her early life in ways that are impossible to ignore. And while she acknowledges it happened, she remains composed, almost detached, as if it's something she has already processed, something she claims no longer affects her. But then they introduce the document, the one piece of evidence that changes everything. A handwritten 14-page agreement they discovered while searching the couple's home, an explicit master-slave contract outlining a dominant-submissive dynamic between Jeremy and Julene, one that specifically framed him in a dominant role and her in a submissive one. And suddenly, the past and present collide in a way that raises serious questions. Because in the context of her childhood trauma, this kind of relationship dynamic doesn't just seem unusual, it sets off alarm bells. And when asked about it, Julene insists it was consensual, that both of them introduced it into the relationship, that she was a willing participant in everything that happened between them.
Though again, the details are vague. She can't recall when it started, whether it was years ago or more recent, only that it had been a part of their lives for some time. And while she maintains there was no coercion, investigators aren't convinced, because they've already heard from others who paint a very different picture of that relationship, including a former client who described Jeremy as controlling, someone who wouldn't let Julian speak freely, who kept her within his sight, who berated her openly on job sites, yelling at her, pushing her beyond her limits, even forcing her to climb dangerously high trees, despite her visible discomfort. Behavior that suggests not just control, but domination that extended beyond the private boundaries she claimed were consensual. And that same client recalls disturbing incidents involving explicit materials, including Jeremy sending graphic pornography to his workplace and even attempting to show explicit images of Julene herself, something the client refused to look at, further reinforcing the idea that boundaries were frequently ignored, crossed, or even erased entirely. And as these accounts stack up, a troubling question begins to take shape. If Julene wasn't as comfortable in that dynamic as she claims, if the control, the humiliation, the pressure became too much, could that have led to something far more drastic? Something irreversible? And investigators push gently but deliberately, drawing connections between her past abuse and her present relationship, asking whether those experiences truly had no impact on her, whether the resentment she claims not to feel might still exist somewhere beneath the surface, but she holds firm.
Insisting she resolved those issues long ago through counseling, that it's not something she thinks about, not something that affects her daily life. And yet, just when it seems like that line of questioning might reach a dead end, investigators reveal another detail, one that cuts through her certainty, because forensic analysis of the couple's computer shows that just 11 hours before Jeremy was killed, someone in that house searched for her father's obituary, a deeply personal, emotionally charged action that directly ties back to the trauma she insists no longer matters. And when confronted with this, her response shifts, no longer just uncertain, but defensive, denying it outright, demanding proof, asking to see the exact timing, the evidence itself. But the investigators don't hesitate. They tell her they'd have it. They can show her exactly when it happened. And in that moment, the room tightens again. Because this isn't just another inconsistency, it's something more intimate, more revealing. A glimpse into what may have been on her mind in the final hours before Jeremy's death. And as that realization settles in, the question becomes unavoidable. Was that search just a coincidence? Or was it a window into something she hasn't yet been willing to admit? In the early morning hours of November 18th, 2009 in Ohio, everything shatters in an instant. And it starts with a frantic 911 call that feels off from the very first breath. "I need help, please listen to me," her voice trembling but controlled, almost too controlled, as she says someone shot her husband while she was right there under the same roof, claiming she woke up to a sound she assumes was a gunshot. And just like that, Julene Simcoe positions herself as the lone survivor of a nightmare, the woman who lived while her husband, Jeremy, didn't. But here's the hook, the thing that keeps investigators up at night for years. Nothing about this scene lines up the way it should, because while the story screams home invasion, the evidence whispers something else entirely, something quieter, something closer to home. And as the hours turn into days and days into years, that question refuses to go away. If she didn't do it, then who did? And how did they pull it off without leaving a single trace behind? Because when first responders arrive, Jeremy is already gone, shot execution style in the back of the head at point-blank range. No struggle, no chaos, just a body in bed and a house that looks staged in all the wrong ways. A .357 Magnum sitting on the kitchen floor, wiped clean, no blood, no prints, a knocked-over chair that feels more like a prop than a clue, a purse full of cash, untouched, like whoever came in didn't care about stealing anything. And outside,
5 dogs that are known to bark at everything, are tied up and silent, as if nothing ever happened. And that's where it starts to unravel, because if someone really broke in, how did they get past the dogs, the alarms, the sensors, the cameras? How did they walk through a house wired for security without triggering a single alert, without leaving a footprint that matters, without taking anything, without being seen, without being heard? And yet somehow this invisible intruder supposedly finds a gun inside the house, walks into a dark bedroom, leans over a sleeping man, fires one perfect shot, then calmly clays the weapon and disappears into thin air. All while the only other person in the house sleeps through it, wakes up just in time to fire warning shots, and calls 911 like she just stepped into a horror movie she didn't write. And that's the version Julene sticks to over and over again, even 4 years later when investigators bring her back in, sitting across from her, laying it out piece by piece, asking her to walk through that night again, slower this time, more detailed, because now they're not just listening to what she says, they're listening to what doesn't make sense, to the gaps, the pauses, the I don't remembers that start stacking up. Because suddenly, the smallest details matter, like why she walked the bedroom door instead of rushing to save her husband, why there's no blood on the gun she claims she fired after touching his body, why Jeremy's DNA isn't on the door he supposedly locked, why no alarm ever went off, why no dogs barked, why every single path that leads to an outside suspect hits a dead end. And the more they push, the tighter the circle gets, because this isn't just about that morning anymore, it's about everything leading up to it. The strained relationships, the financial pressure, the denied loan to days before, the tension nobody wants to admit, the history of control, arguments, volatility, and then something deeper, something darker, a document they found buried in their personal files, a 14-page agreement outlining a disturbing dynamic between husband and wife, a master-slave roleplay tied to trauma Julene experienced as a child. And now the question shifts again, not just who could have done this, but why? Because suddenly there's motive where there wasn't supposed to be one. Layers of control, humiliation, resentment. Things that don't show up in a crime scene but live in the background, shaping everything. And then comes another twist, another rehook that makes you stop and rethink everything. You've got a security-obsessed couple living in a quiet area, alarms, sensors, dogs, routines, habits, and yet on the one night everything matters, none of it works, none of it activates, none of it protects, and the only explanation that fits all the facts is the one nobody wants to say out loud. That maybe there was no intruder, maybe there was no break-in, maybe the danger wasn't outside trying to get in, but already inside, waiting, watching. And when investigators finally lay it all out, step by step, forcing Julene to hear it the way they see it, a ghost killer slipping through alarms, bypassing barking dogs, committing a perfect execution, cleaning up, and vanishing without a trace, it sounds less like reality and more like fiction. And that's the problem, because real cases don't work like that. Real killers make mistakes, they leave something behind. But here, the only thing left behind is a story that doesn't hold together, a timeline full of holes, and one unavoidable truth staring everyone in the face. 2 people were in that house that night, and only one of them walked alive.
And here's where the story takes a turn that's hard to ignore. Because when experts go back and listen to that 911 call, the same one where Julene claims she's desperately trying to save her husband, they notice something chilling beneath the surface, something that doesn't match the panic of a real emergency. Because according to a professional call analyst, there's no way she's actually performing CPR while calmly holding that phone. No way her body language and breathing line up with someone fighting to bring a person back to life. And suddenly, that call, the very thing that made her look like a victim, starts sounding like something else entirely. Because when they break it down, they find 10 behavioral markers consistent with a guilty caller and only 4 that suggest innocence. And while even the experts admit it's not an exact science, the red flags stack up fast. Hesitation, deflection, sentences out of order, details that don't
quite land right. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it, like something just slightly off in a story that's been rehearsed one too many times. And then there's another moment, quieter but just as telling, months after Jeremy's death, at a party where someone asks Julian a simple question, almost casually. Do you think Jeremy knows who shot him? And without missing a beat, she says, yeah, he knows. Then shuts it down. No explanation, no follow-up. Just that one line hanging in the air, like a crack in the whole narrative. Because what does that even mean unless somewhere deep down, she knows exactly what happened that night? And for years, nothing happens on the surface. 5 long years where it looks like she might actually get away with it, walking free while investigators quietly keep building piece by piece until December 19th, 2014, when everything finally catches up to her and she's indicted on multiple charges: aggravated murder, felonious assault, tampering with evidence, the full weight of the case coming down all at once. And now the question isn't if, it's whether the evidence is enough to prove what everyone's been circling around since day one. Julian chooses a bench trial, putting her fate in the hands of a single judge, no jury, no emotional sway, just the facts. And the state comes in heavy, calling witness after witness, laying out a picture that goes way beyond one night. Because for them, this isn't just about a shooting, it's about motive, control, trauma, resentment, and money. Always money, pointing to the life insurance payout, the financial stress, the quiet attempts to shift funeral costs onto Jeremy's family while holding back what she'd already received, painting a picture of someone under pressure, someone with reasons stacking up behind closed doors. And then comes one of the most striking moves in the entire trial. The defense doesn't call a single witness, not one, not even Julian herself. No alternate theory, no counter-narrative, just silence where you'd expect a fight. And in a case built almost entirely on circumstantial evidence, that silence speaks loud. Because when you don't challenge the story, you let it stand. And that's exactly what happens as the judge reviews everything: the inconsistencies, the physical evidence, the behavior before, during, and after, and comes to a conclusion that's been building for nearly a decade, finding that there is enough proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Julian Simcoe murdered her husband. On October 20th, 2017, almost 8 years after that early morning call, the verdict finally lands. Guilty. And just like that, the woman who once sounded like a victim on the phone is now officially the perpetrator, sentenced to 28 years in prison, a delayed reckoning that closes one chapter but leaves behind a haunting reality. Because for 5 of those years, she lived her life believing the truth might never catch up. In 2021, she tries to fight it, filing an appeal, but the conviction holds, the system standing by the conclusion that the evidence, even without a confession, tells a clear enough story. Today, she remains behind bars in an Ohio reformatory, while Jeremy's family is left with something far more complicated than closure, because their loss isn't just about a life taken, it's about years of unanswered questions, broken relationships that never got the chance to heal, and the lingering weight of what really happened inside that house on November 18th, 2009. And even now, when you go back to that first call, that first moment where everything began, you can't help but hear it differently, not as a cry for help, but as the beginning of a story that took nearly a decade to unravel, one detail at a time.